I'm at a red light, which means stop, which some of you children keep acting like children. Shouldn't be shocked when somebody tells you to stop, when the adults show up. Everybody's screaming about the Insurrection Act like it's some kind of tyrannical power grab. Here's a thought. Stop burning down your cities. Green light means I can go again. The Insurrection Act doesn't exist because politicians get bored and want to be dictators one day. It exists because when mobs replace the law, somebody's got to restore the order. And when the city folk won't do it, guess what? You wind up with troops in the street. You don't want that? Control yourself. Peaceful protest is protected. Riots aren't. Looting is not. Breaking things is not. Burning things is not. Setting your own neighborhood on fire is not a heroic act of resistance. When law enforcement gets overwhelmed, the system doesn't just shrug and say, oh well, it actually escalates. So don't act like a child.
All right, well, now I guess it's time to find out whether the good guys have the courage in the end to do the right thing and not care about being called authoritarian by absolute idiots who believe in the politics of upside down world, because apparently we did just get the news tonight that the Pentagon is preparing at least 1,500 soldiers to possibly deploy to Minnesota if the situation continues to spiral out of control, which it does appear to be. This, of course, comes amidst a lot of conversations over deploying the National Guard or even invoking the Insurrection Act, especially given the blatant lack of cooperation, and I would argue myself, themselves engaging in and sponsoring insurrection against the federal government, coming from people like Tim Walz, Jacob Frey, and the Democrats of Minnesota. Now, of course, you are hearing the very backlash from them tonight. They're calling this move authoritarian. He just wants to take over our city, blah, blah, blah. But you know, once again, we have another example of the perpetual victimhood of leftists. You know, a lot of people think that just applies to, say, racial or gender conversations. No, this is kind of the very nature of their behavior. And by the way, it's always been like this throughout history, right? Because what have they been doing for years now? Basically just poking the bear, right? Inciting it, essentially acting like a bunch of hyenas or the bully on the schoolyard who won't stop running around and messing with people. And then suddenly they start to face consequences. There's finally the reaction to their nonstop violence, looting, burning, harassment, provoking. They just keep on provoking people. And then when finally, right, the good guy on the yard stands up and says, stop that right now, they cower, they cry, they're like, no, but we didn't do anything, after, of course, they quite literally did a whole lot, right? That's who these people are. And that's exactly the reaction you're getting right now. So, again, to Democrats, I say, you know, if you're so worried about authoritarian Trump, or let's not give them a reason to send the military, look, let me be completely honest with you. I know you guys think that we, the conservatives, have these delusional power fantasies where we want to see National Guard and troops, you know, all over the city. So we want it to be like a fascist dictatorship. In reality, that's not actually true. We would very much just prefer if you would take control of your cities, right? That's all we want. We want safe cities. We don't want domestic terrorists to be running around on the streets. We want rule of law to be enforced. And you know what you could do? You could just enforce it. Then we wouldn't have to get in this situation. By the way, deploying the military is costly, it's expensive, it's going to be met with several legal challenges from your side that, frankly, we'd much rather not have to deal with. We'd much rather not have to deal with sanctuary cities to begin with, because ideally, local police, as they should, because they also have an interest in removing violent criminals from their communities, should simply cooperate with federal immigration law. But because you don't do that, this is now the response we have to have. Hey, you know, our ICE agents keep getting harassed. Hey, there's terrorists running around the streets. Hey, they're breaking into ICE vehicles. The Minneapolis police, due to their sanctuary city policy, are standing around doing nothing. Maybe the federal government has to step in and do something and get more involved and protect the actual people, and by the way, even the government agents of our country. And we're the bad guys for that, right? The right-wingers are the authoritarians because we're responding to the fact left-wingers handed over control of their streets to a bunch of domestic terrorists. Frankly, again, I don't care what they say, okay? You know, maybe I enjoy their whining, frankly, to a certain degree. If they're calling us authoritarian, it means we're probably doing the right thing, right? If they're calling us authoritarian for saying, oh, you know, we don't think it should be the case in our city where a 72-time repeat offender keeps getting let out of jail and then sets a woman on fire or stabs her on a subway train, then you know what? I'm proudly an authoritarian, right? If it's authoritarian to not want violent mobs running around a city just harassing and assaulting random people, even their own, and the police stand by and do nothing, yeah, then I'm an authoritarian. Oh, what are you going to say about it now, huh? Right? But anyways, let's get into all of this here today, guys. We'll bring you this news again out of the Pentagon and the just ridiculous reaction of Jacob Frey. You know, second time in the past couple years of his mayorship where he plays the victim after he himself basically said, It's okay for my city to burn. Let's get into this, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate it. And before we get into this news out of the Department of War, I just first of all want to remind everyone the very reason why this is even necessary, okay? You know, frankly, I would argue the Trump administration was a little bit too nice with this, right? We gave Minnesota, that state of all places, way too much leeway to say, hey, look, can you enforce the law? Can you maybe consider not sponsoring insurrection? And how did these people repay our gracefulness, you know? They turned around and Tim Walz basically declared that it was a civil war against the federal government. Jacob Frey is entertaining the idea of his local police fighting ICE agents. Yes, it's bordering on insurrection, and at the very least, you're certainly not going to get help from these people in restoring public safety, but I'd go further than that. I think this is exactly actually what they want to be happening. And just remember that before we get called the authoritarians for restoring order, because these people refuse to do it.
Person familiar tells me that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and the Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey are both being investigated by the Justice Department. And a grand jury has issued subpoenas for both of them, though it doesn't appear that either have been served yet. What we do know tonight as we come on the air is that the Justice Department investigation centers on possible obstruction of federal law enforcement. Both the FBI Director Kash Patel and the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche were in Minneapolis today. And just a short time ago, Todd Blanche was on Fox News explaining, or attempting to explain, why the Justice Department is taking this action.
When the governor or the mayor threaten our officers, when the mayor suggests that he's encouraging citizens to call 911 when they see ICE officers, that is very close to a federal crime.
And look, based on their public statements, it's pretty clear that, and based on the statements of officials at DOJ, it's pretty clear there is concern that these two guys have used their positions and their public statements to try to obstruct the execution of federal laws. Now, whether that rises to a crime, I don't know.
Give me an example.
Yeah, where's that clarity?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think they've both made numerous public statements that have made it perfectly clear that they do not want federal laws to be enforced in Minnesota, and that they flatly said they don't want ICE there enforcing federal immigration laws. They both said that. They have literally both said, ICE, leave Minnesota. In fact, Tim Walz said we're on the third day of Gettysburg at one point.
He did not say that either. Okay, sorry, but he didn't say that. Jacob Frey has said,
when things looked really bleak, it was Minnesota's first that held that line for the nation on that July 3rd, 1863. And I think now we may be in that moment.
To be clear, he is referring to a Minnesota regiment during the Battle of Gettysburg. Hyperbole is one thing, but this makes things far, far more dangerous.
Yeah, well, certainly that rhetoric is dangerous, and I think it's a pretty reasonable assumption that you're not going to get any help in enforcing laws when it comes to these people, but I think it goes a little bit further than that, does it not, right? We're actually hearing openly the rhetoric of war coming from people like Tim Walz and Jacob Frey. They're not exactly hiding it. They're comparing this to Gettysburg. They're entertaining the idea of fighting ICE agents. It goes on and on. But then essentially what's happening here, right, is the moment the federal government responds to what they're saying and is saying, oh, is this what you're asking for? I mean, okay. Oh, what? Authoritarianism. We never said that. We've just been peaceful the entire time. Please don't look at us. You know, we're just wholesome hippie leftists. Bull freaking literally, you know, I'm so tired of, they always do this, you know, it's like you just keep slapping someone in the face. And then, you know, if they hit you back, you're like, why'd you hit me? Well, maybe because you should have, like, stopped spending several years just provoking. I mean, it's just like, what do you think? What do you think, you know? That's not a call for violence, by the way. Let's just be clear about YouTube. But it's just like, you understand the behavior I'm describing here, you know? Like they keep on pushing our buttons. They keep on provoking. They keep on committing freaking terrorism. Then they're the victims and we're the authoritarians when we're like, hey, you know, it's time for this to stop, right? No, we didn't do anything wrong. There's many such cases. It's probably a lesson you should have learned in childhood, but clearly we're dealing with a bunch of overgrown children. Anyways, that said, here is now the news out of the Washington Post, and just keep in mind, right, according to Tim Walz, this is what he wants, right? So just saying, right? But anyways, the Pentagon is now readying 1,500 soldiers to possibly deploy to Minneapolis, officials have said. Now, Minneapolis's mayor said Sunday that the administration is trying to bait the protesters into creating a pretext for active duty deployment. Well, gee, I don't think we exactly need to bait the protesters, or you for that matter, because you've already given plenty of reason to do so. They're trying to bait us. They're trying to trick us. No, actually, we just want you to stop committing violence, burning things, and attacking people, and clearly you can't do that, right? Hey, stop trying to run over ICE agents with your car. Stop breaking into their vehicles and stealing classified documents. Stop, burning stuff to the ground and committing riots every single night, and now even just harassing random private citizens who they think look like ICE. No, that's too much to ask. Then we're the bad guys when we say, we warned you to stop like a million times, right? Frankly, if you ask me, in a perfect world, this deployment should have happened about 2 weeks ago. I mean, it should have been happening from the moment, this all started to go down. But of course, for whatever reason, we're way too graceful, right? We're way too nice. And this is what they do. This is what they do, actually. This is how they respond to what really coming from us is an act of compassion. It's of grace. Hey, we know we're giving you a chance. Well, that's what they do. That's what they do with our trust, right? But anyways, okay, here's the news. The Pentagon has ordered about 1,500 active duty soldiers to prepare for a possible deployment to Minnesota, defense officials had told the Washington Post late on Saturday after President Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act in response to unrest there. Maybe we should stop threatening it. Anyways, the soldiers are assigned to 2 infantry battalions with the Army's 11th Airborne Division, which is based in Alaska and specializes in cold weather operations. The Army placed the units on prepared to deploy orders in case violence in Minnesota escalates, officials had said, characterizing the move as prudent planning. It's not clear yet whether any of them will be sent to the state, the officials said there. So, okay. Now, of course, I'm sure the leftists are going to turn around and say, what? Active duty soldiers? How could you do that? Well, according to you, we're at civil war. That's what you said. That's what Brandon Johnson said several months ago. And then, finally, when your stupid, idiotic rhetoric gets matched with the behavior you're claiming has happened. What? We're peaceful people. Yeah, you've just been so peaceful this entire time. I couldn't possibly imagine why the Trump administration is discussing, deploying the military. Now, obviously you could just probably deploy the National Guard, but of course, Tim Walz won't let you, right? And all the judges are saying, no, you need the governor's permission. So, okay, right? You keep trying to make this more difficult, then fine. We're going to do this move instead, right? We're going to deploy, active duty U.S. military. Oh, you don't want us doing that either. It's almost like you just want domestic terrorists to be ruling the streets of your cities, right? You want the criminals to be in charge. What else is new? But for saying we don't want to allow that to happen, again, we're the bad guys. We're the bad guys for wanting to live in peaceful, normal cities. Yeah. Very typical. Take a listen now to what Jacob Frey had to say about it.
This act was clearly designed to intimidate the people of Minneapolis. And here's the thing. We're not going to be intimidated. If the goal here is safety, we've got many mechanisms to achieve safety. And
you're not employing any of them, clearly.
The best way to get safety is not to have an influx of even more agents, and in this case, military, in Minneapolis. Right now, we have about 600 police officers, and they've got 3,000 or so ICE agents and border control. That they are now talking about deploying 1,500 military. This is, it's ridiculous, but we will not be intimidated by the actions of this federal government.
Okay, so blah, 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 your typical whining. Oh, this is authoritarian. This is an overreach. Why are there 3,000 federal agents? But have you, of course, Jacob, addressed the core root of the problem, which is first and foremost? I mean, let's start from the beginning, right? Why does ICE have to have so many agents in Minneapolis to begin with? Because your city and your state blatantly refuse to enforce federal immigration law, which of course allows violent criminals and predators and other likewise undesirables to be out on the streets. I mean, we've recently, of course, even had scandal after you refusing to release information of people in your jails, right? The actual criminals to ICE has allowed these very child predators and other such bad people to be released back into the United States, right? That's number one here. And then, of course, number two, maybe there would not be the need for such a response here to the civil unrest if you didn't run around, first of all, not allowing your police to actually reinforce order on the streets, right? Allowing these protesters and these rioters and these terrorists to own the city of Minneapolis. But then secondly, not engaging in rhetoric, for instance, entertaining the idea of having your local police fight with ICE agents. Now, Jake Tapper asked about this very question, and then we now have Jacob Frey, I don't know, suddenly trying to backtrack here, it would seem a little bit.
Literally fighting one another is pretty stark. Are you worried that's where this is actually heading, with the National Guard and local police on one side in Minneapolis and active duty troops and ICE agents and other federal law enforcement on the other, actually literally fighting, physically fighting?
As I said then, and I'll say now, we can't have that in America. And so what we are hopeful for here is the judicial system to do its part, to see that necessary check and balance, to recognize that we can't have cities occupied in the United States that simply have a different view from the White House. Now it's Minneapolis.
Actually, you know what? I should take that back. I mean, it might seem like he's backtracking because he says we can't have that in America, but really it's the opposite, right? He's basically saying, oh, well, we want the judicial system to get involved because we don't want to see that happen, which is kind of a really passive-aggressive way of saying, yes, absolutely, we as the Democrats will, if necessary, use Minneapolis police and our own National Guard against federal troops. Like, did you notice that? Like, that's actually kind of what he's pushing for there. And he's just saying, oh, I hope the courts get involved on the side of us and not the federal government. Okay, what if that's the other way around? What if the courts get involved and say, actually, Minneapolis, you have to allow federal agents to enforce federal law because you're a part of the United States of America, and that's how it works, actually. What if the courts step in and say, no, you can't just surrender an American city to an anarchist mob because you feel like it, right? I don't know, I'm just saying. I mean, just keep in mind, nowhere in this conversation will you once hear Jacob Frey say, you know, maybe we should just use our police and, heck, even our own National Guard and just make sure that the protests on the streets are peace, safe, and lawful, and we don't have all this violence and terrorism going on. It never actually ends up that way, right? Instead, he says, well, you want to have safety? It's literally basically just a violent threat. You want to have safety? You don't want us to stop trying to kill you? Then leave our city. Yeah, I don't think that in a country where the federal government reigns supreme, it should work that way. Oh, what? Are you an authoritarian? Don't you know about federalism? Notice how they kind of use all of these principles that you think are connected to the Founding Fathers, but they're not. No, the Founding Fathers probably would have already invoked the Insurrection Act in this moment. We know that because they put down rebellions even in their time, right? Even in their time.
You know that Portland, we got it down to almost no crime? Do you know that? But we pulled it out. We had a Supreme Court decision. We can go back. We're allowed to go back in. But we'll go back in when the crime starts. Look, the crime will soon start because they now know that we're out. And at the appropriate time, we'll go back in. And we may, if we're allowed to. The most powerful thing we haven't used the Insurrection Act.
You're considering using the Insurrection Act?
I've always considered it, but we haven't needed it anywhere. 48% of the presidents of this country have used it. Bush used it, I think, 22 times or something. You know that, right? I mean, Bush the elder.
But yeah, there you have it. Once again, about 2 seconds after Tim Walz and Jacob Frey said we have to turn down the temperature, we're right back to where you're not really getting a sincere apology. You're not actually getting any vows from the local Democrats that, hey, okay, fine, we'll get the situation under control. We'll make it so that way you don't need to deploy the military. No. They're actually trying to provoke us into doing it even more, you know? He's actually doubling down there. He's basically implying, yes, I'm perfectly fine engaging in active rebellion and insurrection against the United States of America. But, of course, just wait for it. If we go through, if we respond to them like they're acting and say, okay, you're engaged in insurrection, which means we're sending in the military, we're sending in the federal government, and obviously Jacob Frey, Tim Walz, you're not going to just be performatively investigated by the DOJ. You're going to be arrested for seditious behavior and seditious conspiracy against the United States. Then they're going to call us authoritarians, right? This is a fascist takeover of America. Oh, is it? Or is it basically the logical consequence of everything you were saying you were going to do? And then finally we took you seriously and not just like let you just keep on being this yapping dog while you endorse and sponsor and allow the violence in your streets. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I frankly, I don't even know if that moment is coming or not. To be honest with you, I'm kind of almost depressively demoralized when it comes to this issue of, oh, will leftists ever actually face accountability, right? Will the domestic terrorists in the streets actually ever get arrested for a single crime, you know? Will the federal government actually restore civil order when there's mass unrest going on? Will the politicians who are sponsoring and inciting and pushing the violent behavior from their voter base, is there ever going to be accountability? I don't know. I'm just saying, right? Again, if that day ever happens, then you already just remember everything that they did and that they pushed to this point, and before they start crying about the response and facing the consequences of their own actions. I don't know. I'm just saying. But that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.